Hey. Sports Talk, no intro is necessary on some nights. This would be one of them. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, Thursday night edition from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor, Tom Hayes. Good to have you with us. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. We merge playoff baseball with college football and the NFL and high school football this weekend. The Yankees, of course, the story of Major League Baseball.
No, they're not.
Winning the wild card game last night. Aaron Judge doing judgy-and things. And now we've got the NLDSs underway, and Milwaukee is leading Colorado 2-0 in the third. And tonight, the Braves open their series out at Los Angeles. We actually have to pay attention to the Braves again.
Do we?
It's been a while.
Do we?
Yeah, we do. We should. We should give the Braves their due. There are a few Braves fans in the state.
We can't pay attention to the Mets.
Easy.
This is true.
Wow.
Yeah. But I will say this for Red Sox fans out there.
Professor.
Your worst nightmare has come true. This is what you did not want. A healthy, hot, confident Yankee team coming to Fenway Park for
I don't think the Yankees
potential 5-game series.
I don't think the Yankees want that Red Sox fight, though. Should be
not scared of the Red Sox. We won each of the last 2 series with them. We're not, not afraid at all. So anyway, glad that the baseball playoffs are heating up. Glad the Yankees are in it. That's all that matters. As for the weekend ahead in tonight's program, got some substitutions going on. We got some pinch hitting. We got baseball going on, so we got some pinch hitting tonight on Sports Talk. Ellis Johnson will be subbing for the coach and the quarterback. The coach is out of the country, and the quarterback is up a tree somewhere.
Hopefully you got a deer.
Coach went out to his island again?
I think he did.
Okay.
And we've
What's the name of that island?
Turkey and somewhere?
Turks and Caicos.
Yes. Turkey and somewhere. So we got Ellis Johnson coming in at the bottom of this hour. No money coach tonight. He has got some family business he's taking care of. We do plan to hear from the opposing coaches, Barry Odom. Odom as in dumb.
Really? You are some sort of
now I'm in a bad mood. I tell you why. I tried to hang a light today before I left the house and just couldn't get it done. Those things are never as easy as they appear.
I thought it had something to do with your golf game.
No, I didn't play golf. Didn't play golf. No, I wish I had. I'd rather been on a golf course. So we've got Barry Odom and Dave Clausen. We'll hear from them. Perhaps some of the Gamecocks and Tigers as well. Mike Morgan will be along, and we'll talk with him about the Braves and their resurgent season and their chance of beating the Dodgers. We'll have recruiting for you as well here. So it's a full show. You can join in, 800-956-7266. So, I mean, everybody thinks Clemson will beat Wake Forest. Nobody's concerned about that.
Nope.
The question is South Carolina, Missouri. It's really kind of on our poll question at SportsTalkSC.com, who's going to win. It's really, at one point, it was heavy Missouri. It's sort of evened up now, and it's sort of a pick 'em from our voters about who's going to win that game on Saturday.
Well, the weird thing, and I heard this on another network that was talking about the game, I feel like both of these fan bases are, and I feel somewhat privileged to talk about both of them since I've covered sports in both states. It's basically a combination of two franchises that are kind of chicken littling themselves. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. People at Missouri think the sky is falling because they should have competed better against Georgia. And of course, South Carolina fans can't seem to wrap their head around losing 5 straight to Kentucky and basically a proverbial no-show in the second half against Georgia in their game against the Bulldogs. So I think both are kind of watching with, I would almost call it cautious pessimism, not even cautious optimism. It's cautious pessimism. So I think both sides are kind of looking at the other and saying, oh, the other team's going to win. And of course, where South Carolina's sitting right now, they cannot afford to lose this game because of what it might mean for them down the road.
Well, the key point is, again, you got two teams that think they have to do superhuman things when they play strong opposition. And they try, and people think, well, they're struggling. They're trying to do too much. They're supposed to be doing their job, not somebody else's. But you see guys moving out of position because they think this guy over here needs help. So, and then you end up making mistakes. And as I said before, I go by the old adage: more football games are lost than won, and you start to make mistakes. And you help a team that's better than you make it their job easy.
I thought Corey Miller broke it down expertly last night when talking about, guys like Bryson Allen Williams and TJ Brunson playing out of position, guys being C-gap players and ending up in the B-gap, trying to do too much and not staying in their lanes. And that was what led to a lot of the defensive breakdowns in the first half against Kentucky. And again, it stands to reason, Corn. I think South Carolina has more talent top to bottom than Missouri, but they do not have the confidence or the swagger that they played in either of their victories with Coastal Carolina and with Vanderbilt. And they're not going to necessarily face a program that is at the talent level of those two because Missouri's got more talent than I think both of those teams do that they beat.
Well, sure. I mean, you can't look at those two wins and compare that to what they're going to be facing this Saturday or to the two losses that they have. They're just different level teams. And I mean, the Vanderbilt win was still okay. It's a good road win in the SEC, and they played well. I mean, that kind of performance against Kentucky might have led them to a victory. I mean, they played well against Vanderbilt. They had the offense clicking, big plays going. They got the running game going, and the defense was very good. Defense was
decision making was fantastic in that game,
and defense in the second half against Kentucky was very good. And they had yardage in the second half against Kentucky. What they could not do, of course, was finish off drives, avoid the turnovers, and make the big plays to get enough points to come back in that one after they had fallen behind. So this is, as we stated already this week, this is a big, big game for South Carolina. Now, I don't want to brush off Clemson and Wake Forest. I mean, anytime you take on a team on the road, you're on the football field. You know, funny things can happen. This Wake Forest team has got some talent, and they put up some good numbers. Their offensive numbers are really, really good. They're among the best teams offensively in the ACC going into this game. You know, they're averaging 38 points per game. They are really balanced, 244 on the ground and 243 through the air. You can't get much more balanced than that.
And their
problem has been their defense. They're giving up 32 points per game. So this, you look at ETN, and now you look at what we'll think will be a healthy Trevor Lawrence with those receivers and all. This could be a banner day offensively for Clemson.
This is a mental game for the hair, Trevor Lawrence. His heart was pumping Kool-Aid early in that game because this is the start. I'm the man, and he started overthrowing everything. Here is his game to exhale and say, look, I'm comfortable. Let me do my job. We'll check out the scoreboard at the end of the game.
Well, the other part of this for Clemson that's a concern is that this is the same kind of attack, the up-tempo, fast pace, with a very great skill position player. This is the same thing that they were basically facing with Syracuse. They're going to try and run a lot of plays and run things kind of in a similar way that the Orange did, and it's going to be once again incumbent on Clemson's depth to make sure that they are in the right places, especially when they have to go to twos. And the one thing that continues to be a concern is the secondary, because of the fact that you're going to have a lot of guys moving in and out. You don't know the status of Trayvon Mullen. Mark Fields is back in there after a week off with the suspension that he had. You might have to use Kyler McMichael again, the freshman cornerback, and just so much of that is unknown. And like I said before, when we were talking earlier this week to both Zach Willis and both the coach and the QB, Dino Babers seemed to really
the M&M boys.
That's what I say, the M&M boys.
Yeah.
They basically, Dino Babers keyed in on something, a weakness in the Venables scheme. I'm wondering if Dave Clawson has found that in watching the film this week.
We shall see. We shall see. I expect Clemson to roll. I'm not going to pick them to cover. They just aren't good candidates for covering. I am going to say South Carolina, home field advantage. The importance of the game, maybe an overall talent edge, better than what they played in the first half against Kentucky. I'm picking the Gamecocks to win at home against Missouri and extend that winning streak against the Tigers. So Clemson will continue its winning ways against Wake. Gamecocks winning ways against Missouri. Your thoughts, 800-956-7266. Our email, got a lot of email we can get into. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. And something else we're going to talk about tonight, with basketball practice now underway, it's the trial up in New York, and a lot of stuff is starting to come out of that trial, and none of it is good for college basketball. We'll be back, Sports Talk, here on a Thursday night.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Coming up 10 minutes from now, we're going to hear from Ellis Johnson, former defensive coordinator at South Carolina, Clemson, all across, defensive mind guru all across. We'll get his thoughts on South Carolina and Clemson this week. And just at this point of the season, Mike Morgan in our second hour. We'll hear also from the opposing head coaches in the games for Clemson and South Carolina, Dave Clawson of Wake Forest, Barry Odom of Missouri. We'll hear from you, 800-956-7266. Wanted to get into this stuff involving the Brian Bowen testimony, which is going on in New York, Corn. And, you know, this really is kind of the peeling back of the curtain, well, Wizard of Oz style, looking back and kind of seeing all of the underbelly of what's going on with these agents and these guys for the shoe companies. According to what Brian Bowen Sr. said, there were various payments that were alleged that were going to be funneled by the shoe company guy, Christian Dawkins. Dawkins told Bowen Sr., according to the testimony, that Arizona would pay $50,000 via an assistant coach. Oklahoma State would pay $150K, $8,000 for a car, and undisclosed money for a house. Texas would help him with housing, and also Creighton, of all schools, Creighton, $100,000 and a good job, like a lucrative job. University of Oregon did not recall discussing anything with Dawkins, but $25,000 for an AAU game. $80,000 originally was the offer from Adidas to go play at Louisville, but then he negotiated it up to $100K because that's what was Billy Preston was paid to go to Kansas. So again, you just look at this, Corn, and you see that more and more of this is kind of coming out, and Bowen's still not done on the stand.
And of course, they also said that Colin Sexton, $5,000, and then a weekly stipend,
and Jerron Blossom game. His name came up in testimony. He's, of course, 4 years at Clemson, was allegedly provided $350, according to documents shown in court. So that's peanuts compared to what we're talking about here. You know, this is something that anybody who's followed basketball over the years is not surprised by any of this. Not the source of the money, not the fact that the shoe companies are involved. This has been basketball's dirty little secret, wink, wink. And the college coaches, you know what? They got no one to blame but themselves. They knew it was going on. They went along with it. They knew the shoe companies were involved. They can't deny that. If they do, they're being crazy. And they're just lying to you. They take the money from the shoe companies themselves. So they know whether it's Adidas or Nike or whichever one happens to be, you know, greasing the palms of these players. They knew that they were they had their backs when it came to recruiting these top 25 and top 50 prospects and getting it done the way that it was done in the basketball recruiting market of the time. And I don't know that it's still not going on at this point, even though we've got this big investigation and this big trial going on. Who's to say that it's still not going on in some form or fashion?
Yeah, you said you were talking about Arizona being thrown under the bus. They just got a commitment from a 5-star today.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, the great players have still got to go somewhere. But, you know, the shoe companies, the AAU programs, and not all AAU programs are dirty. I mean, I think there are a lot of them who do it the right way and try to take kids and give them a chance to improve their game in the summer and give them a chance to play against other elite competition. But there are still enough out there to kind of spoil it for everybody. And, you know, who's funneling and funding these AAU programs but the shoe companies. And so, and you look around and you see these players hopscotching from high school to high school and town to town. Oh, we've seen it right here in Columbia. Christian Brown goes from AC Florida to Lower Richland. Now he's in Georgia. Juwan Gary leaves goes from Columbia High School to Gray Collegiate. Now he's in Charlotte to be closer to his AAU program. I mean, it's just all fishy to me, and I don't basketball is the worst of it. You don't really see it that much in football or baseball for that matter. Hopefully it won't seep into those sports in the years to come, but basketball still got a big problem. Now this is 2 preseasons in a row where college basketball's got to deal with all this off the court
and
news as they're trying to prep for a new season.
The real stupid thing about this is that you're dealing with this, and any number of different schools can be implicated just because, we had assistants from South Carolina while they were here and now are elsewhere and things of that nature. And the one thing, too, is that this basically is anything that can basically provide a negative spotlight on your program and just more questions for them to answer. And the other part of this is that this is just only one guy. This is one guy. I wonder if you start peeling back with more of these highly powered shoe companies and recruits, what more you find.
And you'd have to find the runners too, because they've had those runners who maybe even college students that, the kid gets up one morning, goes to his closet, and sitting in his boot, there's a nice little roll of cash.
I don't know how it stops. That's the other part of it.
Well, and you're just talking about here recently. This goes back decades. I mean, if they really wanted to dig deep and go way back, you'd be shocked at the great players who took money at their various schools from a variety of sources. And we all know it. We all know some of these great players were getting funded.
It's not even
by
great
one
players.
source or another.
It's not even great players. Some of the ones who aren't great got money.
All right, let's get to the phone calls here for a little bit. 800-956-7266. Dr. Tiger in Myrtle Beach. You're up here on Sports Talk. How are you?
Good evening, fellas.
Hey.
Just a quick question for you. Like, I'm just a little confused on this whole basketball shenanigans, but if the shoe companies are legitimately giving the money to the schools, I don't understand the correlation of, did they break a rule or did they break a law in order for the
both
FBI to be involved in it? Well, I understand if they broke a rule, but what jurisdiction does the police have for enforcing breaking an NCAA rule?
Bribery.
Yeah.
Bribery laws.
And also you could look at it as well when, when these players sign
bribery is a law. There's laws against bribery.
When the players sign their letters of intent, I mean, I'm not sure the exact wording, but I think there's wording in there about, this is a contract and you can't do anything to violate this contract, like taking money or things of that nature. That would be what's the word they're using for the colleges? Not bribery, but help me out here with the word. What's the word I'm looking for? That's in violation of the scholarship agreement.
I could see if it was bribery. If they said, okay, if you take this money and if you tell everybody we're going to do this to you, you know what I'm saying? But that's not what it seems like. It seems like, hey, we're going to give you money to come play for us.
Well, I tell you what, they
robbery,
really got into this when apparently it wasn't enough for guys to try to coerce with money for guys to say, when you're ready to turn pro, I want to be your agent. But they were trying to control their finances. They wanted to be their financial advisor also. And then that's when I think the Securities and Exchange Commission came into it, looking at, wait a minute, hold it now. You mean tell me you're going to try to control the guy's finances and you're paying him to try to be his agent? And then that's when I think the law came in.
It's basically just considered corruption.
Yes.
In a broad word, it's just considered overall corruption. The charges that were filed, the indictments last October were more or less related to fraud and bribery,
federal bribery.
Yeah, bribery and things of that nature. And I mean, what you've got going on here in the nutshell, you've got the shoe company, the guy representing the shoe company, paying the assistant coach money to help recruit a guy, that money being funneled to the guy he's recruiting to get him to that school with the promise that the assistant coach is going to steer him back to the shoe company and also to the agent. So it's kind of a double header sort of thing that the assistant coach is trying to benefit from his financial gain.
Well, the irony of this is a lot of these bribery laws are basically were used and created to take down things like the mob back in the day, and almost kind of just as a juxtaposition, almost kind of feels like this is a mini mob when it comes to college basketball.
But from an NCAA standpoint, it's definitely a violation of recruiting rules. No
Very
question
much
about
so.
that. All right, got to hit a break. Be right back.
Well, it's great when we can bring in a Babe Ruth or a Ruthian type replacement for the coach and the QB this week. We bring in our own little heavyweight replacement, Ellis Johnson, who, of course, is a defensive mind that has spanned both of the big programs here in South Carolina, been a head coach in this state as well, and somebody who can speak very much candidly about the two programs and their state currently.
Yes, he can. I mean, when you got to replace two people with one, that one better be a big one.
And he is a big one.
He's a big one. Ellis Johnson joining us here on Sports Talk. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great. Fun to be back with you.
It is. It is. I hope you've had a good football season so far. What you been doing since you've been away from the game this season?
Well, unfortunately, the last couple of weeks I've been moving, and it's been no fun to say the least. But I've just been watching a lot of TV football. I did go down to the Citadel, my alma mater, see a bunch of old teammates and friends. But I haven't been to any other ball games in person, and I prefer to watch them on TV because I can see much more and see more of the game with the camera work and all that. So just been sort of a fan. I'd like to get back in November, December. So I'm gonna test the waters and see what's out there at that time.
Great. Hope it works out. What's your take overall of the football that you've watched on the quality of the football that you've seen?
In any particular place or just overall?
Just overall. We'll get particular in a minute.
Well, yeah, the one thing that has jumped out, it seems like Alabama is really just a little bit better than everybody else. And I'm a little surprised at that. Not that anybody should be shocked, but they had a lot of losses last year that you would have thought they'd be one of 7, one of 8 teams. But they're both sides of the ball. They're a little bit better than most of the teams that they're going to have to play. I think that some of the new rules, that the one with the 4 games to help the freshmen play a little bit and not lose their year, that thing has boomeranged. And not only is the Kelly Bryant situation a fiasco because of it, I think there are like a dozen kids who've already taken advantage of it as upperclassmen. So that's been sort of a storyline. And then early on, it was just a lot of things with the hurricane, the weather. I think that ball game that Carolina missed against Marshall really hurt them because it really hurts your progress to lose a football game on your schedule, not lose it to another opponent, but lose it on your schedule during your first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of the season, because even a game is an opportunity to improve at that time of the year. So that's just a few things I've observed, Phil. Obviously, it's a lot of different things going on with college football that it changes every year. And the rules not only change, but just looks like people adapt and it gets better and better.
Ellis, it's interesting looking at you mentioned the transfer rule, and obviously it came up in a big way here at Clemson with the departure of Kelly Bryant and obviously what happened in the succeeding game. What was your take on just the way that Clemson handled the ensuing situation with that, and also just your thoughts on Bryant's departure in general?
Well, I don't know if Dabo saw that coming or not. I can't imagine he did when he made the decision. I talked to someone in Tuscaloosa the other day about a week ago, and they were trying to compare the situations of Alabama and Clemson, and why didn't they do it like Nick did it so he would have his 2 quarterbacks? Why didn't they do it like Dabo did it? Because it wasn't fair for Nick to keep that kid around. I don't think either coach calculated what he was doing to another kid or trying to hold him in the program or whatever. I think they both reached the point where they had to say that clearly this player is better than that player. And when that becomes a case, you can't fool your team. If the teammates know who's the best player and you don't play the best player, you can lose your football team. So I would imagine in both of those situations that those 2 different coaches saw that particular quarterback was better than the other player, and it was time to let him have his shot. I shouldn't get into other people's business. I'd hate to see Kelly do that. I don't think Kelly Bryant can play in the NFL. At quarterback, I'm not sure what he's looking for when he transfers, unless he just feels like he wants to play another season at quarterback and not, have a lot of plays. But it was kind of ironic that the very first thing that happens on the very first start for Trevor is he gets hurt. Yeah. And they've got to bring in the next quarterback. And had that been Kelly Bryant, he may have taken the starting job back. So, it just, nobody has a crystal ball. And I wouldn't second guess the young man's motivation for what he decided. The only thing I did hear is he made a comment that he didn't get a fair shot. Now, I don't know how you start for 2 seasons and say you didn't get a fair shot. And you can say somebody misevaluated, but you can't say you didn't get a fair shot. You played in 18 ball games, I think.
On the way the game is being played now on the field, Ellis, you watched a lot of games on TV, and understanding almost there almost has to be an evolution as far as the pass rush is concerned, because not only are they playing this hurry up, but guys are getting rid of the ball with a 2 or 3 step drop. And it seems that the great defensive linemen still can create havoc by those guys who have this ability to disengage from a block and get passes tipped at the line of scrimmage. Getting back into coaching, if you just thought about it, would you coach a defensive lineman, especially a pass rusher, differently than you did maybe 20 years ago?
Probably different than 20 years ago, but we were teaching a lot of what you're talking about in my last two stops. When people got in the shotgun and were throwing the 3 steps and the bubbles and the jet screens, the tunnel screens coming back underneath and all that, you started to play on first and second down. You taught your linemen, don't be so concerned about getting to the quarterback. The ball's going to come by your ear hole in about 2 seconds. And it's not going to matter if you're on the way back to the quarterback or not. So we talked a lot about that, mostly on first and second down. Some teams would tip off when they were going to try to throw a pocket pass, and players were studying well and knew what the tips were. They could get into pass rush mode. But you make a great point. Until it's a 3rd and long, you can change your defensive approach then, because there is going to have to be an amount of time that quarterback's going to have to hold the ball. But on first and second down, these new style pass routes and other concepts, the slants and all these other little things they're throwing, you're exactly right. The ball's not going to be there when you get there, so it's kind of pointless to be jetting up the field every play trying to hit the quarterback. That being said, we always had a goal to knock the quarterback down a minimum of 10 times in the first half. And we would give up rushing yardage. We would give up a little bit of passing yardage. Whatever it took, we wanted contact on the quarterback at least 10 times. And we would chart that every week and see if we were getting that done.
Visiting with Ellis Johnson here on Sports Talk, pinch hitting for the coach and the quarterback on this Thursday night. So you're preparing for Trevor Lawrence now as Clemson's quarterback, and the difference in the Clemson offense. What do you do with a freshman quarterback across the way who's got this big arm and can make all these big throws? And one thing that Clemson has felt really good about this year, it's big plays, it's chunk plays. They're among the best in the country at running off big plays. So what do you do defensively against him?
I tell you, it does put another dimension into it. And Kelly was very hard to defend too. I didn't have to coach against him, but I was on staff, as an analyst, if you will. And he was very difficult. But he could still throw the ball downfield and throw some 9 routes and some predetermined things. We didn't have to sit in the pocket and read coverage. Now you got a quarterback there that can, and he's got the arm to make every throw. It's ironic. He got hit the other day and got injured. Mm-hmm. He doesn't look to be a real physically large kid. He's kind of slender. Mm-hmm. I would try to hit him as much as you could. I don't think they're going to want to run him. The other quarterback, I can't remember who the third one was that came in, but he certainly proved that he can play college football and win ball games. But they don't want to have this happen again. And they're going to probably be a little bit concerned about letting Trevor run the ball on any kind of design runs. But it just makes it, totally hard to. You got a quarterback that can make all the throws. You got running backs that are one step from the NFL. You got a good offensive line. I go back to what I've always said. You have to. You don't want to say this, but you have to go into the game saying, guys, we're not going to stop it. We've got to make sure we minimize the damage. We got to do 3 things. We got to get plays for lost yardage and get them behind schedule, somehow get off the field. We got to be good on 3rd down. We got to be good in the red zone, and we got to get some takeaways, because you can bet the team that good is going to end up in the red zone. And if you don't get takeaways, they're going to get points.
All right, Coach, hang on. Going to hit a quick break. We'll come back with more. Ellis Johnson, and have him break down the Gamecocks a little bit, offensively, defensively, and how he thinks his old team is progressing this year. And we'll be back with more in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
We've been privileged to be discussing things of the Clemson and South Carolina persuasion with Ellis Johnson here on Sports Talk. He's sitting in for the coach and QB on Thursday evening here. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornblue, Professor Tom Hayes, and Ellis kind of shifting gears to the Gamecocks. What do you attribute kind of the inconsistency on defense from South Carolina's perspective? You know, they played a pretty good first half against Georgia. In the third quarter, things kind of went by the wayside. And, of course, the Kentucky game, laying pretty much an egg in the first half and then coming back in the second half and only allowing 75 yards. What do you attribute their inconsistencies to?
Yeah, I don't know if I could put my finger on any one thing. I know coming in, they felt like they had a problem with depth up front. And so what happens, especially in these hot games early in the year, if your offense is not staying on the field a long time, those big guys up front cannot go 10 and 12 plays in a row and come out on a 3 and out and go another 8-play series and come out and go 3 and out, et cetera. So it kind of snowballs when either side is not playing well. The other thing, you know, they don't have a lot of experience in the secondary, depth, if you will, and they were counting on some young players. And I think the young players in the perimeter have probably come along a little faster than the young players in the defensive front. But that's the thing I would probably think is the biggest issue. And they're beat up. You know, a lot of the injuries, kids have been able to play on Saturday, but they haven't had a good full week of practice. They may not be totally full speed when they hit the field. You lose your best pass rusher, who I think probably is best pass rusher, unless you bring in Bryson on a blitz. Dennis Wanham is without a doubt the best pass rusher. Lost him in the first game against Coastal, and I thought he'd be back in a week. He hadn't played since. Mm-hmm. And he may have another 2 weeks. It's a ligament thing, kind of a funny thing to try to rehab. So that's what I feel like their biggest issue is. They get tired up front when they play their game and against good offensive lines, and it can protect and run block. They're just having a hard time playing at a high level for 60 minutes.
Well, they face a good offensive team and an excellent quarterback in Drew Lock Saturday. So what do you think they're trying to dial up? What do you think Muschamp, you know his mind as well as anybody, what do you think they're trying to dial up for this Missouri offense to give their own offense a chance?
Well, he does a really good job with his pressure packages, and I'm sure they will have to try to pressure this guy. Now, what y'all were talking about earlier on the style of passing game that's come along now, and Missouri does as much of it as anybody. That ball comes out of the hand real quick on first and second down. It's not a lot of pocket pass back there. But I know he will probably bring pressure on him. They've got to try to hit him, got to try to frustrate him. He is mobile, but they're going to have to come after him. If he gets out of the pocket a few times, they got to do the best they can corralling him. But I don't think there's any magic X's and O's you can do. They're a good offensive team. They've always been very explosive. They're still running the same basic philosophy they did when Gary was there. And I think South Carolina is as good a football team as Missouri right now. But what I'm concerned about is Missouri's strength is their quarterback and the receiver core. And I think that's a bad matchup for Carolina and what they're good and bad at. The second thing is the best aspect on the other side of the ball is their defensive front. They are really, really good. Although defensively they're not good statistically, their front is very, very good. They're disruptive and they make big plays. And Carolina struggled a little bit in pass protection. So, and that's the biggest thing that worries me right now too.
If you're a defensive coach and you look at your defensive front, they've been on the field for a while. Do you just kindly tap the offensive coaches and say, could y'all please run the football and get some first downs?
Yeah, you got to be careful how you tap them, though. Sometimes it gets a little frictional there, but most good head coaches do get a handle on that. And, you know, the other thing is when you get behind, you have to try to speed up, too, to save as much clock as you can. But you're exactly right. It has to complement each other. And I've coached with people who have a little bit of tilt to their balance, and they don't really believe that's true. I think they learned the hard way after a few years when some of the newness wears off of their offense and people catch up with it, and they realize they don't have an offense that has the other aspects of the game in mind. They have to make adjustments. And it is a big deal because I think the time of possession and the time you sit over on that bench. And there's another thing a lot of people don't realize. There's time on the play clock, and there's time on the game clock, and there's time on the wristwatch. And you can run plays, you can call some fast plays and everything, and kind of mess with defenses if you don't have to do it all the time. But if you make first downs, Coach Spurrier was a master at it. He wouldn't look like he was doing it. They would stay on the field sometimes. They may not run but 5 plays because 3 of them were penalties or something, but he would stay on the field offensively sometimes for 17 minutes. And I'm talking about wristwatch time. You got your players over on the bench. You're able to make corrections. You're able to get some joy juice, and you're able to catch your breath. And you come back out the next series ready to go.
Yeah. What's in that joy juice?
Well, sometimes it's Gatorade, sometimes it's plain water.
Oh.
That's the stuff on the bench.
Yeah. I hear you.
I say I got joy juice, but it's not those things.
Hey, you gonna join Spurrier in that springtime league? Maybe jump in there and coach up a defense.
Doesn't look like it. I certainly would have been interested in it. I've had some family issues. I've been trying to get settled down, and everything's good now, and I would be able to be mobile. At the time, I think he was formulating the staff and making a lot of contacts. We had, a couple of contacts, but I really couldn't commit, and he didn't offer anything, and I could not pursue it to a degree to show the true interest. But I'm not sure if he's filled his staff now or not, but I would be open to it. I think it's coaching pro ball now at this stage in my career would be something I'd enjoy it, but it's very, very difficult to get those jobs because there's just so many of them. There's not many out there.
Yeah. Did you apply for the Erskine job?
I didn't. I had one of my former coaches call me and tell me that he was applying for the job, and I was thinking, I wonder if he's talking about being an AD or something. But I didn't know they were starting football.
Yeah.
But, I think it's unbelievable. Some of these schools are starting football, and most of the schools other than the Power Fives are losing money, and I'm not sure what it does, but I think they've proven that having a football team brings kids to the college, and they don't give full scholarships. So what it does is it actually is a way to recruit enrollment through an activity just like the band or through academic scholarships or through other endeavors that you do to bring in students and recruit them. They found that that's one of the best ways to recruit students to a school is to use your athletic program, and obviously football has numbers.
Yeah, they'll bring in like 150 football players, and they'll all have to get student loans, and that money goes to the school. They see it as a financial bonanza.
I was up at Newberry when I first moved back here. Went up to spend some time with their staff, and they were getting ready for reporting date. And I said, "How many kids do y'all have come in?" He said, "We'll probably have about 158 because two or three had come in." I said, "What?"
Well, they have.
I said, "Where y'all get all the equipment?" He said, "The president makes sure we got whatever we need. That we bring 158 in there." I said, "How many of them will be here when school starts?" He said, "Oh, probably about 140, 130.
Listen, I had people tell me like at Erskine, not picking on Erskine, but their basketball roster has about 40 or 50 players on it. They have about 40 or 50 guys there for basketball. I mean, they don't all.
They probably can't dress them all.
None of them, a whole bunch of them. They just practice. They never play, a bunch of them, but they're there to be around a team. And, of course, they're paying tuition and the school benefits. So, listen, I have a feeling by popular demand we're going to have to bring you back somehow, some way.
Well, I'd love to. I missed the time we did it. Really enjoyed it when Chuck and I did it. He's such a knowledgeable person in football and a great coach, and that was a lot of fun. I know y'all got one going like that, but any other time, just give me a shout.
I'm thinking my head's spinning right now on some ideas, so don't go too far.
Dude's good.
As long as I got phone service, I'm available.
That's my guy.
Okay.
Thank you, Coach. Good talking to you.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate you. Good luck. All right, Ellis Johnson.
That dude's forgotten more about football than any of us in this room know.
And the thing about Ellis, he makes it so simple. He just lays it out for you in terms you can understand.
I knew I threw some raw meat at him when I talked about the running game. He loved that running game.
I know that the depth is an issue, but I still think that South Carolina should be able to get its stuff together defensively to where they can play a consistent 4 quarters of football.
And he brought up an interesting point. Wanham, we didn't know how important Wanham was.
Oh, I think we did. I think
out.
we knew it. I just didn't.
He knows that injury. He's thinking he's not going to be back for a little while longer, which would be a real shame. And do you think about trying to redshirt him now?
Who knows?
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we come to you from our Columbia studios. Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, and Phil Kornbluth all with you. It's time for the weekly spot with Mike Morgan, SEC Network, ESPN play-by-play man. He's brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, their mortgage team more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. Visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage, and by BP Skinner Clothiers. People nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner, located in Columbia, in the Vista. No matter where you are, Brent will come to you. bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment.
Very good having Mike with us tonight, and it's very timely with the Braves returning to postseason play. You know, we originally hired Mike for this segment to be our Braves reporter way back when people cared about the Braves. So this is like coming home. This is like back to the future, because we got you here talking about the Braves tonight to get things rolling, and here they are. You know, when they built the new stadium, they told fans, be patient. We'll be back in the playoffs soon, and I guess they followed through on that.
Yeah, they did more than that. They're grossly ahead of schedule by at least a year. Nobody, including anybody in that Braves front office, if you were to give them a dose of truth serum, thought that this would be a postseason team. If you go back 2 years ago, I mean, that team was so woeful. It really wasn't even a major league team. I used to call it a 4A team, right between AAA and major leagues. That's basically what it was. a bunch of guys that resembled the original cast of Major League, but without a Hollywood ending. They're just that bad. And now you've got all these really good young guys that the farm system was improved dramatically, and that's finally paying off dividends. Some trades that at the time might have seemed questionable. Now all of a sudden you're getting the residual value from those, and just patience, patience. You know, it's so easy when you're that bad for people to just say, "I'll give up your top 5 prospects and go ahead and get a veteran in there now," a la, you know, the old Steinbrenner method, Bill, that you could appreciate. But the fact of the matter is they couldn't do that, and they don't have a $200 million payroll. They do need to do this thing from the ground up, and that's what they've done. And I don't think anybody's giving them a chance necessarily to beat a Dodgers team that is loaded with talent. But the fact that they're even here makes it very exciting. And one thing I've learned about this team is they're pretty hard to count out in any series.
What about the shortstop situation?
It doesn't look good for Dansby Swanson. I think you're going to see a whole lot of Charlie Culberson, who's been kind of their ultimate utility guy. You know, when Acuna was hurt, he played in the outfield. When Albies was hurt, he played at second base. And now you're going to see him the starting shortstop tonight. I think he is a guy that, you know, in spring training, I think a lot of people would have said, what are we doing with him? And now all of a sudden he's become one of the more valuable members of this team. He's been clutch all season long, and he'll be the guy that's going to be at that position for the foreseeable future.
What's the road to victory here for Atlanta? Obviously, you see a pair of lefties off the bat with Ryu and Kershaw. Obviously, that gives them a nice advantage. What do you think is the road to victory, and how do they get past this Dodger team, which comes in obviously as a favorite?
Keep the ball in the park. I mean, you go through their lineup, and it seems like everybody in their lineup has 20 home runs or more. Just make them earn it. You know, make them bunch hits together. You know, Fultonevich is a guy that has had an amazing breakthrough season this year and finished strong. You know, sometimes you'll see a young guy who the light bulb turns on, and he's great through his first 20 starts, and then has a very gradual decline. That's not been the case with Fulte. He's been really strong coming off an all-star season, his first, one of the more electric arms in baseball, and now knows what to do with that stuff and is much more composed on the mound, and he'll have to be tonight. This is easily the most pressure-packed start of his career. You know, they don't have like a Tim Hudson of years past or a Derek Lowe back in 2010 that they can turn the ball over to and say, okay, you've been here before, you know what to do. That doesn't exist right now. But Fultonevich can really make a name for himself tonight if he comes through in the clutch.
All right, let's shift gears and get to football. And around the SEC this weekend, we got a lot of really interesting intra-league matchups besides the one in Columbia, USC and Mizzou. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I guess you got to look at LSU and Florida. And, you know, one of two things is going to happen here. LSU is going to take a big step forward towards proclaiming a spot in the playoffs, or Florida is going to announce itself as being back.
Yeah. I think that game, along with Auburn, Mississippi State, for different reasons, the loser of that game, that fan base is going to be miserable because it's probably going to be the season they hoped they would avoid. It was going to be very disappointing for the loser of that game in some respects. But you're right. I mean, I think LSU, Florida is the headliner. There was a time that this was must-see TV, and then as both programs went on to decline, it was more a story about which AD would win the shouting match over where the game should be played after weather issues from a couple of years ago. Now it's about the two teams and what they're playing for. Florida made a major statement last week. They still have to win games ugly because that is not a prolific offense. But neither is LSU's, for that matter. I mean, Joe Burrow gives them exactly the type of steady leadership that they need, doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. This is the kind of game I could easily see being the first one that gets to 17 points wins it. I think both defenses are ahead of the curve in terms of what offenses they'll be going up against.
Last year, we saw their arch enemy, Auburn, step into the ring against Alabama. Who at the end of this season is going to challenge in the West, if at all, this juggernaut that the Crimson Tide has become?
You know, I think at this point, Mississippi State has been a disappointment. Texas A&M has shown they're limited, despite all the hoopla with Jimbo. That's still a roster that prove it. They prove that they're not worthy of Alabama's caliber right now. And if Auburn can't find an offensive line between now and November when the Iron Bowl takes place, I don't see how that Auburn team can do it. Now, they might figure things out between now and then, but it's going to be the same 5 guys, as far as I know, that are going to be blocking for Jarrett Stidham and trying to open up holes for the running game. They haven't been good at either. So to me, it might be, if LSU looks impressive on Saturday, then I think everybody's going to turn to LSU as the only team capable of rocking the apple cart with Alabama, because Auburn right now looks like the team that has to really, they have a more pressing need, I think, than LSU does with that offensive line.
Mike Morgan, our guest here for his weekly spot with us on Sports Talk. All right, Mike, how do you handicap the Battle of the Columbias, South Carolina and Missouri here in the Palmetto State this weekend?
Well, I'd be very interested to see how that Gamecock defense does against Drew Lock. I mean, Missouri, to me, is woeful on defense. I would expect this really, and you guys know more than I do about Jake Bentley's situation in terms of health and everything else. This is the kind of game I'd like to see Jake Bentley turn the corner. I don't think he's progressed the way most people thought he would or hoped he would. And so from an offensive standpoint, this is what the doctor ordered. You're back at home and you're against the Missouri defense. It's not very good. Conversely, for the Carolina defense, they're going to be tested. I mean, Drew Lock is going to be a first-round draft pick for a reason, and he's got some weapons at receiver, and they can put points on the board. I think it's going to be, for a game that's going to be lost in the shuffle nationally for obvious reasons, it's going to be potentially one of the better games on the board in the SEC, because I don't think there's a ton of separation between the two. I'd certainly give Carolina the edge, and Carolina overall is a better team and should be a better team, but they got to figure some things out right now. I think they're still stunned a little bit about what happened in Lexington against a good Kentucky team. I've been trying to tell people they're good now for a month, and nobody wanted to believe that. But this is not Kentucky. Kentucky can beat you on the line of scrimmage on both sides. Missouri can't.
We have some interesting news from Will Muschamp in his call-in show. He says Bentley, a game-time decision Saturday against Missouri.
Wow.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah.
That tells me he's not going to play. That tells me at this stage he's not going to play.
I never felt confident about his ability.
That changes a lot.
Honestly.
Mike, we thank you, my friend. Have yourself a great weekend off. Where are you going to be next week?
This weekend, I actually have a weekend off, so I'm going to be enjoying it, and I'll be at the Braves game on Sunday.
Cool. Well, you enjoy. We'll talk to you next week. All right, Mike Morgan. Morgan on the move here on Sports Talk. We'll talk more about this situation with Bentley.
I got more, and it's not good.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
More from Will Muschamp on his call-in show. Basically, Scarnecchia got most of the reps with the first team in Jake Bentley's absence this week. Kerryon Joyner got a few as well. Bentley's playing time, a game-time decision with the injured knee. Look, I mean, I don't want to sit here and proclaim myself a prophet here, but when I saw Will Muschamp speak on Tuesday and I saw him say that Bentley's going to play, I kind of figured he was, I don't want to say lying, but fibbing.
What's the difference?
What kind of jersey do you have on?
Not a Clemson jersey or a Carolina
No,
jersey.
but I mean, what kind of jersey?
An Islander jersey.
You have a hockey jersey on.
Yeah.
You ought to know, because who lies more about injuries than hockey coach?
An upper or lower body injury. Yeah, it never really seemed like a real thing.
The definition of fib: tell an unimportant lie. If you're using the verb form, if you're fibbing, if you're
well, that's an important.
If you've told a fib, then it's a lie, typically an unimportant one.
In my opinion,
So it's really not a fib, because the status of a player starting would not be a fib because it's important.
He lied about DJ Wanham's status before the Georgia game.
Oh, you're calling Will Muschamp a liar?
He did lie.
You
he said that Wanham was going to play.
All right, you hear that, folks?
He said that Wanham was going to play before the Georgia game, and we haven't seen him since.
Well, you have to remember that in the case of Bentley with the knee, unless he's just totally blowing smoke and covering up to keep Missouri off guard, he'll get treatment all night tonight, probably tomorrow.
He's gotten treatment all week.
They're going to see how he can run around on Saturday morning and make a decision. But I mean, yeah, the history tells us that when he says that, it's more likely than not the player's not going to play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also you got to think that the orthopedic surgeon will tell them, look, this kid needs 2 weeks of rest. He could play on it, but I would not play him if you want him the rest of the season.
And
which means, let me think, is he one of the last of the Spurrier era recruits? Michael Scarnecchia will be your starting quarterback if Bentley's not able to go. He'll be your starting quarterback. The gift at Spurrier. Who else is still around from that Spurrier recruiting class? I guess maybe Zach Bailey was in that class. He's a fifth-year guy. Yeah. Scarnecchia is a fifth-year. Not many of them. But anyway, go ahead.
It's just if he did not practice all week, it's hard to envision a scenario where he starts.
Well, he's not Aaron Rodgers, where he doesn't have to practice and can step in and throw for 400 yards. He's just not. He's not Aaron Rodgers. But then again, who is?
You're making a very inept comparison here. Comparison is very inept.
Whatever. By the way, the Gamecock football. See, I hate.
You hate the.
No. Well,
you're not gonna want to talk about it, but now you want to talk about it.
The teams that use Twitter to promote themselves and hype themselves up, I hate it when they really hype more than what they are. You know. And so the tweet here by the Gamecock football Twitter site was about the
battle
uniform.
armor.
Yeah, and it says it's who we are. It's not what's on our helmet. It's who we are. And my question is, well, who are you? I mean, go out and do something. Go prove yourself this year before you start hyping yourself as being something. Because you haven't proved yourself.
They're going garnet on garnet with the script Carolina that you don't like
it. I don't like the script. I like the block C. I think the block C on those road unis look great. The white and the big stripes and the
script Carolina. I don't know why I don't like it.
We just disagree on that.
I'm sorry.
All right, let's get on to some other stuff. We got stuff to do.
We do.
High school.
High School Sports Report is brought to you by the folks at Farm Bureau Insurance. Favorites at Farm Bureau Insurance get you all of your favorite things like competitive rates, local agents, great claim service for all your auto, home, life insurance needs. Get an no-obligation quote at favorites.com.
All right, let's give you some stats from across the state as compiled by the High School Sports Report. So the reported leading rusher in the state is Jimmy Bozard from Jefferson Davis with 1,781 yards. Now, yeah, Jefferson Davis. I'm not sure if that's 8-man football or what. Are they 8-man? Skiza. The number 2 running back, all we got is his last name, Epps of Buford Academy with 1,235.
Not Omar.
The leading rusher reportedly here in the high school league would be Braden Bennett, Brandon's son at Southside with 1,194 yards. Amore Wilmore of Newberry, 1,143 yards. Michael Dukes from First Baptist big-time recruit, 933 yards. Passing, Reed Sharpia, son of the coach, grandson of the great coach at Brooklyn Casey, 1,868 passing yards, 11 touchdowns. Tyrell Jackson of Wren, 1,740 yards and 22 touchdowns. And Gunnard Neistat of Porter-Gaud, 1,596 yards, 13 touchdowns. Hunter Helms, dad's a friend, from Gray Collegiate, 1,501 yards and 12 touchdowns. And Ty Olenchuk of Dutch Fork. They never run out of Olenchuks at Dutch Fork. He's got 1,400 passing yards and 17 touchdowns.
You want to go ahead?
Leading receiver is Joe Predusbury of Brooklyn Casey, 45 catches, 730 yards and 5 touchdowns. Gage Zirk of Dutch Fork next, 39 catches, 725 yards and 9 touchdowns. And that's it as far as your stats, courtesy of the High School Sports Report.
Let's do recruiting.
Let's do recruiting. A little back-to-back high school action here. So, speaking of Dutch Fork, we checked in on 2020 receiver Jalen Hyatt. And, of course, he's a very good receiver, 22 catches, 402 yards, 8 touchdowns. People love his speed. He's been to Clemson twice. Last weekend, he went to Duke. His offers remain Virginia Tech, Duke, and Virginia. He has been hearing lately from North Carolina and Penn State. Clemson, USC are also on him hard. He feels offers from those two shouldn't be far off. He's expecting Clemson recruiter Jeff Scott to be at his game tomorrow night against River Bluff. And they're talking very strongly to him about an offer. And he likes, of course, the idea of potentially playing and catching passes from Trevor Lawrence. And so that remains a possibility. USC receivers coach Brian McClendon has also been working him. And they're trying to get him in for a visit. He says they've been in touch about that. Right now, he plans on being in for the Texas A&M game, and he said they're very close on an offer as well. No favorite. Speaking of Michael Dukes, he has taken an official to East Carolina, won't take any more until after his season. He does plan to take an unofficial visit to Clemson at some point. He said running backs coach Tony Elliott talks to him a lot. Also still hearing from USC, and said more likely than not, he'll get to a USC game as well. He's expecting East Carolina to scout him on Friday. Offensive lineman Jekiah Clark, 6'3", 260 of Loganville, Georgia, a one-time Auburn commit, made an unofficial to Clemson for the Georgia Southern game. He's a center. He's not been offered, and he was told by the Tigers they are looking at another player at his position, but they want him to come back for more games and keep in touch. And so he says he's going to continue to keep interest in them until it reaches the point where they're not going to offer for sure. He also visited Louisville last weekend. He plans to officially visit Arkansas State and possibly Virginia. He's also working on setting up an official visit to Illinois. And USC offered 2021 athlete Andre Turrentine of Nashville. LSU, Ole Miss, and Tennessee are some other early offers. 2022 offensive lineman Eli Henderson, 6'3", 240 of Burns, plans to be at USC on Saturday. In baseball, two commitments for USC. Right-hander Andy Peters, 6'2", 185 of Logan Junior College in Illinois. He'll be a sophomore this season at Logan. He's a native of Morris, Illinois. And this guy sounds really special. 2021 shortstop Michael Braswell of Smyrna, Georgia. He drew recruiting interest from Clemson, Arizona State, Florida State, LSU, UCLA, Florida, Vanderbilt, and he's nationally ranked very high by perfect game. And he's one of these high school baseball players who's got a chance to be a very early draft pick by the time that summer rolls around. So right now, if you're South Carolina, it's good to have him committed. Question is, will you ever get him into school?
That's the other thing. I mean, with these guys who they come in, highly ranked and, draft eligible, things of that nature. You got to kind of pick and choose where you go with those guys and maybe see if you get guys who actually want to play college baseball.
Well, I mean, sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get lucky and they come to school. Sometimes you overload on those kind of players. They end up signing pro and you end up being very short. I remember that happening to Jack Leggett one year at Clemson, where he signed a bunch of big-time players.
Frank Core?
Frank Core was one. And
Frank Core was a football scholarship, though, wasn't it? Safety?
True that. And the outfielder for the Braves was originally a Clemson commitment, but didn't come to school. All right, we'll be right back.
Again, if you're just joining us here on Sports Talk, Will Muschamp said at the top of this hour that the Gamecock quarterback, Jake Bentley, will be a game-time decision. His words, Scarnecchia, the backup, got most of the reps at the first team in the absence of Bentley. Kerryon Joyner got a few as well. Bentley, a game-time decision with the knee that he injured against Kentucky. Again, you know, I mean, you were there. You saw it. And I saw it from the television copy. Just that knee never looked good to me. The fact that he was basically having to play on one leg, and that's not the kind of thing that heals based off of 1 week, especially if you have to practice on it. Now, I know that there have been guys who have gone through a week without practice, but like you said, that's not something they usually do at the college level.
No, so that means if he can't go, it's going to be Michael Scarnecchia's game to start, and we'll see how much Kerryon Joyner gets worked in, if at all. Look, Scarnecchia knows the offense. He's a 5-year guy. He's never gotten a chance to play in a meaningful moment. This could be his moment to shine, and this is where the depth of your program has to come through. Clemson proved last week that it could win and come from behind with a backup quarterback, a true redshirt freshman at that. They pulled it out. It's about the culture of your program. Maybe South Carolina under Muschamp, they're not deep enough into that culture building to be able to do it. The defense is going – this is really going to put the pressure on – if Bentley can't go or is not effective, it's really going to put the pressure on the defense to have a good day.
Not only that, but the running game. I was going to say the same thing. The one thing that Clemson did that South Carolina hasn't done at this point in the season is commit to the run. And you're going to have to commit heavily to the run, like get married to the run, because that's what's going to have to give you any chance to win if you have to rely on Scarnecchia and Joyner, the combination of the two, to win on Saturday.
Well, see, that's why I think some of these guys have been playing too many video games. Hey, we got to put the ball up. Why? If you're running down somebody's throat, why do you? Because everybody wants
getting 7-8 yards a chunk. You don't need it.
Exactly.
But, okay, that's all great. They haven't proved, except for Vanderbilt, I'm not counting Coastal Carolina, they haven't proved that they can do that on a regular basis. Now, they're averaging 179 rushing yards per game, but, I mean, their numbers are still skewed somewhat by what they posted against Coastal Carolina. They had such a big offensive day, and they haven't played enough games. They only played 4 games. So they their numbers are still skewed a little bit because of that.
But your numbers are also skewed by the number of sacks you've given up, because they count that against your running game.
Well, how many sacks have they given up?
I have no earthly idea.
Well, you should know that before you throw out how many sacks is being
But I was just telling you, you got to look at that.
Well, let's see how many sacks they've given up. I don't know that they've given up a bunch of sacks. They've lost 51 yards on sacks. 7 sacks for 51 yards.
It's a lot in 4 games.
Yeah, but the yardage is not enough to impact your average.
And really,
51 yards.
Really, it's mostly 3 games. Just because I don't think they got any sacks against Coastal, did they?
You mean gave up any sacks?
Yes.
Probably not.
No.
Let's hear from coaches. Let's go to Missouri.
Head coach Barry Odom is in his 3rd season. Got there the same year as Will Muschamp. Of course, he proves to be somebody who very much like Muschamp, a defensive coach, but he has a high-powered offense in his own right with Drew Lock and a lot of great playmakers, but he has a lot of respect and sees a lot of similarities in the program that they'll see Saturday in Columbia.
Well, I think this, overall it comes down to the ability to perform at a higher level than they do, and that's every opponent, whether it's here or away or in the parking lot. You've got to go focus and bring and deliver your A game, your best every snap, and whoever does that wins the turnover margin, eliminates explosive plays on defense, or makes them on offense. That's when it'll come down to the 4th quarter. That's going to who will be in position to win a game. So, they do a lot of things really, really good. And I think that we have the opportunity to do that as well. So we need to go focus and play our best game to have a chance. And I know that we'll get the best out of Will's squad as well.
Barry, Jake Bentley left the game against Georgia early with an injury. How much of this week is preparation for him? And do you go back and try to find what they do with another quarterback in there as you get ready for this weekend?
I would expect we'll see Jake out there first snap, and I think their offense will go as it does. He's a great competitor, and I think he'll be ready to go play. So we're preparing for him to be the starting quarterback and to play for 4 quarters. Also, you're always aware of what else is out there when you're trying to game plan against someone. When the other guy went in the other night, in the situation it was, we've got enough film on that. Seems like they run their offense.
Coach, Drew kind of mentioned that he kind of views South Carolina as a rival. Does that, in your few years here, have you kind of seen that that's maybe a little bit more heated? Is it a sort of a rivalry to you?
Well, I wouldn't. I think every game, would be a rivalry. I guess I don't know. I mean, there's two competitive teams. Obviously, we got great respect for what they do and how they do it. It's a great place to play, a fun environment. If Drew wants it to be that, then let's do it. I'm all in. Let's go. If it makes us play better, let's absolutely. But it's the next opponent for us, and they're a good one. And I know that we'll get their best shot.
Barry, does Brian Edwards kind of force the secondary and what you guys do on defense, force you to be balanced so you can't help over on Debo? How does he change things?
No, he's explosive and is a big time playmaker. And they've got a couple of those guys that you watch and study, and they get your attention pretty quickly. So there are going to be times that there's one-on-one matchups that we've got to find a way to win the competitive ball. And if you spend too much time rotating the coverage or focused on one guy, then they've got enough playmakers in position to go hurt you in other areas. So we've got to be aware of where the guys are lined up, obviously in by formation and what our tendencies are, and then go play ball, cut loose, and understand that if you spend too much time focused on this guy or this area of the field, they're good enough. They've recruited well. They've got scheme wise that they've got areas to counteract that and hurt you in other areas too.
Missouri,
sir.
It was last year they were kind of languishing, and they played somebody like really bad, and they put up a ton of points. Remember that
UConn,
and everybody, and then I think they just went on a roll offensively.
They played a bunch of crap teams,
but it helped. No, my point is, you're right.
Built confidence.
Right. It got them going, and offensively, they haven't looked back.
This was after they played Georgia. They lost 53-28 to Georgia. They beat Idaho 68-21. They played UConn, beat them 52-12. They beat Florida 45-16, Tennessee 50-17, Vandy 45-17, and Arkansas 48-45.
Yeah, they got on a roll. They started believing in themselves, because I think people were kind of grumbling about Barry Odom before that thing took off, weren't they?
You can really find some belief when you bring in the Vandals.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, the Idaho Vandals.
Just saying.
I've noticed that the fathead photo that you have of Barry Odom in your den at your house had little darts thrown all over it.
I do not have a fat head of Barry Odom.
I do
have a Gary Pinkel bobblehead, but I do not have a Barry Odom fat head.
Yeah, but that Barry, but yeah, you thought it was a fat head, but that was a regulation size.
I'm taking it with me.
For those of us who've been watching on our Periscope, and of course you have to look at Will because he sits in the middle, because I look at the clock, so I sit over here. But they might be wondering what the heck that is you're wearing.
I'm wearing a New York Islanders sweater. It is opening night of the hockey season.
Are they the Brooklyn Islanders?
They're not the Brooklyn Islanders. They are the New York Islanders.
So they play in Brooklyn.
They've split time between Brooklyn and Nassau Coliseum this year.
Yeah,
and the next couple of years.
That's not what I'm worried about. It's not. It's the fact that he's wearing the number 13. That's what gets me.
I worry about the fact he's actually wearing a hockey sweater, and it's like 90 degrees in Columbia.
I'm a northern person. I have that cold blood.
Cold-blooded.
Cold-blooded.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, we've heard from Barry Odom. We're going to hear from Dave Clawson, head coach at Wake Forest, and he's going to give the take on Clemson from his standpoint. I mean, what can he say? He's just impressed with the Tigers every which way that he can look, and so we'll hear from him. He's done a nice job there at Wake Forest, though. He has made them competitive in a different way. When they were competitive and they won the ACC and went to the Orange Bowl, that was under the former coach at Ohio. What was his name? It's been a couple of years. It's been a few years.
He used to be in Virginia as an assistant,
and he was
graduated from Virginia.
They were ground oriented.
Yes,
and Odom. I'm sorry, Clawson has made them two-dimensional. As I pointed out, there's only 1 yard difference between their averages on the ground.
Al Grove.
No, not Al Grove. That was going back
Bill
a long
Dooley,
time.
Jim Caldwell, Jim Grobe.
No, Jim Grobe. Yeah, that was
right.
it. He was very successful.
Well, you said Virginia. That's why I thought of Al Grove.
All right, be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Tying up some loose ends here on Sports Talk. Again, the news that we got before the top of the hour from Will Muschamp, the quarterback for South Carolina, Jake Bentley, is a game-time decision. We'll continue to discuss that. 800-956-7266. Michael Skarnecki and Kerryon Joyner splitting the reps in Bentley's absence. High School Report brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Fave rates from Farm Bureau Insurance. Things like competitive rates, local agents, and claim service. Get a no-obligation quote today at faverates.com. What do you got high school-wise?
Well, a couple more recruiting notes I wanted to sneak in. According to a source this afternoon, we're expecting defensive end Dallas Corbett of Gray Collegiate in Columbia to announce a commitment to UCF by the end of the week, perhaps as early as tonight, so keep an eye on that. And Jalen Perry, cornerback out of Georgia, decommitted from Georgia. This is important for South Carolina because the Gamecocks were one of his top schools when he committed to Georgia many months ago. So keep an eye on that moving forward. As far as our high school report for tonight, high school report number 2 for tonight, catching things up. And, of course, tomorrow night is going to be another big night of high school football around the state. Some of the top games, got some good ones. Dutch Fork at River Bluff, 5-0 teams. Dorman at Gaffney. Fort Dorchester at Berkeley. Going to be good down the low country. Also, tomorrow night, it's Hartsville at Marlboro County. Both are 4-0. Greer at Travelers Rest. Daniel at Wren. Again, these are just some of the top games in the state based on the records. Lancaster will be home to South Point. North Augusta plays at Airport. Moving on down through the classes and picking out a few other of the top games scheduled for tomorrow night. We've got in a 2A 96 home to Saluda. Hannah Pamplico at Carver's Bay.
6-0 Wildcats. Got to love them.
And then in 1A, a game to look for tomorrow night, or 2 of them, it's Lakeview at Lamar and Dixie at Whitmire.
Who's Latta have?
Latta has East Clarendon.
Okay.
So it's just good to see the teams in the PD in that area have been hard hit by the flooding, able to get back onto the playing field. Quickly, let's go to Hank in Columbia. Been holding for a while. And then we're going to hear from Coach Clausen. Hey, Hank.
Hey, how's it going, Corn?
Good.
Hey, I wanted to call. You know, there's always been a lot of grief with for Frank Martin and all with this recruiting stuff. And y'all were mentioning the Bowen case earlier. I thought the most interesting thing about the testimony today was that the kid was paid, or not the parent was paid $2,000 a month for the kid to play on Lala Mere's high school team. He was paid $25,000 a summer to play on an AAU team. And when he switched to one AAU team for one summer, that parent was paid another $25,000. Now, if all that turns out to be true, there's a whole deeper thing going on in recruiting than just saying, well, they just don't want to play for so-and-so coach.
Like they said when this started, it's the tip of the iceberg. And they're going to keep digging, and they're going to start testifying, and you're testifying under the threat of perjury and things of that nature.
I think they gave him immunity, did they not?
I don't know, but those who are testifying under the threat of perjury and all that, they're going to sing like a jailbird.
I think they gave him immunity.
Well, keep in mind that this almost is tantamount to what we used to see in Hollywood when parents takes the kids out there to be the great time actor.
Yes,
and then when they get old, they don't have any money because the parents done sucked them of all the money.
All right. Wake Forest hoping to spring the upset. They've lost 9 in a row. Wake Forest has to Clemson. They get them at BB&T Stadium in Winston-Salem, the old Groves Field, right across from the Joel Coliseum there in Winston-Salem. Here's Coach Dave Clausen. He's only responsible for 4 of these losses against the Tigers. He's going into his 5th year. He's in his 5th year. They got a pretty good team at Wake, but in looking at Clemson, he knows they are a cut above.
They're talented and they play with a great motor, and they're able to do that because they have depth and they can roll guys in there. But even watching these guys on PAT field goal block, which a lot of times if you're ever going to take a rep off, just watching how hard Wilkins and Lawrence and Bryant and Farrell and these guys go, and then they've got guys behind them that flash. You know, certainly the Xavier Thomas kid showed some real explosiveness against Syracuse and had a great sack. And, Justin Foster's a kid from North Carolina that we tried to recruit very heavily. And so they're really good up front. Their linebackers can run. They were one of the few teams last year that didn't have to play nickel against us, and they got away with it because they could cover us. The secondary is always good. They're giving up 263 yards a game, which is second in the ACC, and they're giving up under 17 points a game. Offensively, right now, they're the best in the ACC. They're close to 500 yards a game, 38 points. What other program in the country? So the guy that played the second half for them the other day was fourth string in the spring. And he went in there and just did what he had to do. I mean, he made plays with his feet. He threw an absolute dart on a 4th and 6 that really allowed them to win the game. And it's scary when you think about it. He, out of the spring, probably was 4th. And then they had a transfer and another transfer. Now he's 2nd, and he could go in. And, Clemson was down by 2 scores in the 4th quarter and found a way to win. And, so whoever their quarterback is, whether it's Lawrence or Bryce, they're in really good shape. The offensive line, I think, has improved every year. Certainly Hyatt is one of the best tackles in the country. But both tackles are really good. The guards and center is physical. Running back, they have depth. Antonin, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his last name or not. And if it's not, I apologize to him, because I thought a year ago that he might be their best running back as a freshman, and he's just gotten better and better. He's elusive. He's fast. He's already run for 600 yards, 8 touchdowns, and averages over 8 yards per carry. And then Feaster is an outstanding back as well. And then at receiver, they're loaded. They play 9 guys. And, they have Rodgers and Higgins and Renfro, and those guys are, the best of the best in the ACC. But there's 6 other guys they can play, and there's not a big drop-off. And, like I said about the quarterback position, that they're in great shape. So, again, we're playing one of the best teams in the country this week. We've tried not to talk too much about them, Clemson, in our meetings. Our focus is us getting better. I do think we improved from Notre Dame to Rice. I don't think it was just our execution level was much better against Rice. Forget who the opponent was. I know that, Rice doesn't have the personnel that Notre Dame has. I just thought our execution was better. Our assignments are better. Our alignments were better. And that allowed us to execute.
All right, Dave Clawson, last year, Clemson won 28-14. It was 28-0 in the 4th quarter. Tigers pulled the dogs, and Wake scored a couple of touchdowns. But, Clemson scored in its first 2 possessions of that game. They're up 14-0, and that was it until in the 3rd quarter, and they knocked in another touchdown to go up 21-0, pretty much sealed things. And, again, the Clemson defense pretty much kept Wake Forest under wraps for most of the day. They didn't put up any huge numbers. Of course, a different quarterback now for Wake Forest, but Dortch played in that game, and he had 5 catches, and Dortch had 11 catches last week against Rice. He's capable of getting behind you if you're not careful.
Curious to see what Clemson's offensive plan is out the gate. I want to see how they try to attack Wake Forest from the jump, what the script looks like. Probably a lot of short, intermediate throws, maybe not as many of the deep shots that they saw earlier against Syracuse.
Matthew Colburn's gone over 2,000 yards in his career at Wake Forest as a running back, the kid out of Dutch Fort, the kid who was originally going to go to Louisville until they stiffed him on signing day. He goes to Wake Forest. He's had a nice career. I don't know if he's going to start Saturday. He'll play a good bit. He'll get his carries.
If you're a South Carolina fan, though, this weekend, things just got a lot more nerve-wracking for you, knowing that Jake Bentley is a game-time decision.
All I care about is that we set sail on fire tomorrow night. Get it? Set sail on fire tomorrow night? Yeah. How the Islanders doing?
Scoreless after 1 period.
That's exciting hockey, boy, I tell you. All right, that'll do it. Tomorrow night, we got so much for you. I can't get it in here in the final seconds. Just make sure that you join us. Pro will be away for a week. He's going on vacation or somewhere, who knows. But Will and I will be here.
We will.
Make do with us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.